Here.
Okay, good evening, everybody. The mic is the mic in. Come over and sit there. Just to preface, so what we're going to do tonight for 30 South Broadway is we're going to look at both affordable sets of units, the four up top on 30 and the two down below. Now, the two down below, Mr. Donato will point out that there are no external changes in the building. And so we really won't be having a whole lot to say about that. We've already discussed that in the past as far as the viability of that being an Irvington historic landmark. And what we're going to do is look at, essentially, for the most part, look at the 4-unit affordable cluster that's going to be on the 30 South Broadway. You want to go ahead?
The project consists of two parcels, 30 South and 40 South Broadway. And on 30 South Broadway, we have 4 affordables, which sit right here. And on 40 South Broadway, we have 2 affordables that sit down here, for those locations. And we're going to do that use for the Concert House, which is 2 affordables, which are down here. All right? So the location. The exterior of the Concert House is going to stay as is. I'm not going to change anything on the exterior of the house. Just so I'll show you the pictures first. The existing house, white stucco, black roof, windows, everything stays as is. We're going to put the house down the middle and do 1 2-bedroom unit on one side, 1 1-bedroom unit on the other.
Are you changing the landscape at all?
The landscape will be in the whole landscaping plan.
Okay, so we're not looking at that.
When we come back to the whole entire landscaping plan, then you'll see the whole landscaping plan of everything.
Because there is the driveway change
Yeah.
and other things.
Yes,
So
we're gonna be removing asphalt that's
Yeah.
further down here, that's all coming out. And just this asphalt here that's already there is gonna remain. And there's also a platform, a wood platform that's right here, that's gonna be removed also.
Any new windows or doors?
As we go through it, we weren't able to go in the house at all until we close on it. That was the agreement. So once we go through, if we feel that we're gonna have to change the windows, then we're gonna submit those here.
as a separate.
Yeah. But as of now, we're gonna leave everything as is. Above top, we have 4 units going into one structure. That structure is gonna be here. So first floor, we'll have 2 units on the first floor, 2 units on the second floor.
Could you hand us the renderings?
It's just a rendering of.
It's just a single rendering?
This is gonna be the actual rendering, what they're gonna look like.
Yep.
Because I can submit them, I didn't wanna
Yeah.
hand them out yet. That's what the actual units of the market rate units final look at.
Well, these are the final, this is the market
That's the
rate.
market rate units, correct. So for style, for roof colors, for
Are you
siding,
gonna do a rendering of that one?
we're gonna do the same as that. Shingle, the cedar shakes will be the same, the roof will be the same, and the windows will be the same. Instead with the
So
garage
the same
doors.
trim,
Same trim, everything, correct.
You have to, right?
Yes, everything has to match, absolutely.
So for purposes of tonight, just so I'm clear, you're only submitting
The affordable.
the affordable, and you're not, we don't have an actual rendering, do we have materials to look at? Or just these color photos to,
Just the color photos. When I do the materials for the entire site, it'll be one set of materials for the entire site.
Essentially, what we're doing here tonight is trying to get to a point where we can approve the affordables to go into the overall package. The county needs this information. They need to know that we've looked at it and we've approved it conditionally based on the overall package, which we'll obviously get a chance to go back over 40 South, 30 South, and everything else.
Yes,
Okay.
nothing is written in stone.
Okay, so this application, we really shouldn't get hung up into the colors, so
Absolutely.
to speak, and shades or anything else?
Yes,
Okay.
so the affordables will get them into the county.
Okay, so we still have that opportunity
Absolutely.
Yes.
available to us down the road. All right, can I see those renderings?
These are the main property though.
And everything will look the same. The siding will look the same, the roof, the windows, the garage doors, everything will be identical throughout the whole project, has to match.
So the other elevation?
This side. We'll read
No,
one.
no, I think on, it looks like there's two sheets.
But I think it's 4 points.
Okay.
Did you want to run to the Markway unit? I didn't.
Yeah, because I'm only looking at two of the elevations, but I assume.
That's what we would have discussed with,
No, I couldn't figure out the roof, so do you have the other, do you have a roof plan? No, there's a bump and I just can't figure it out. Couldn't figure it out. No,
Top bump?
the top bump. There you go, that's what I was looking for. Other. So I have one comment, and that's that it's the thing I couldn't figure out. So why isn't the peak of this at the same height as the ridge, the main ridge beam?
This here,
Yeah. Do you know why?
I can answer that question.
Because that's my comment about it. And the other thing is, why is it cut back?
This stands higher.
No, that's fine. That's all in the language of the house.
Correct.
So go to the next page. Because I was looking at this and I couldn't figure it out.
And that's why that one stands higher than two sides.
And the bump is just the site plan hasn't been updated, I get that.
Correct. For that.
Yeah, so that door is proud. The door that I'm seeing here
On the side.
is the bump that we see in the plan there. And the landscape will be updated.
Absolutely.
So I just want to ask a little bit, it seems that this is the one roof where, if you go back to the previous, that you have this hip roof detail on the back instead of your usual, the swoop.
Yes,
I'm just curious why that is. Do you,
that's the way the architect did it. Would you want some different?
yeah, there's something about that language that you're using, and I was just going with this. Yeah.
We can bring it towards, because this is rear, so. Take it
Or something like this. I'm just curious why that.
Consideration.
It's the one, so all this.
Bring a gable instead of a hip.
Right, that's the language that you seem to be using, and it's similar to the house that's up on Main Street and.
We can entertain that.
Okay.
That's fine.
I would urge you, if you can, to do the rendering of it when you come into
We're in
the
the process of
Great,
doing it all.
that's great.
I just want to bring this in so we
Yep.
have an idea of what we need and go through. Any questions?
Based on the purpose for which it's being presented.
As I said, this is more of a procedural move than anything else, because this entire package is gonna come back before us. Once, we're not having another meeting in December, so we'll come back before us. And that, so you're telling us the whole package will be represented for the January meeting? Okay, we appreciate this, the sooner you can get the package, to us, the better off we'll all are, so we can review it.
Submission is going to be the same day, it's going to be the earliest date of submission. The same thing for the first week of January.
You can work that out with Ed, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but the longer we get to review it, the better off the whole process is. It'll save time, at the actual meeting. Any other questions, issues, concerns? Okay, do I have a motion to conditionally accept the 4 affordable units as presented, and the 2 affordable units down in 40 South Way as presented?
So moved?
Second.
Oh, without the comment?
No, conditional.
Conditional, okay.
Yes.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ken, similar to which house on Main Street?
The house just south of the deli?
The Burnham House?
Is that
Or
the
the
Bernard
old Burnham House?
Oh, on Broadway.
On Broadway.
Right here in the back. No problem. Okay. The next continuation that we will hear is ARB 16-64 Circle Drive, Wortman edition.
The house stays exactly as it doesn't change. Good evening. I'd like to meet the architect here this evening, my client. As you may recall, we were in front of the board a few weeks ago. There were a few comments that the board had, and I'll just quickly go through some of the things that were sent in the new package. A roof plan was requested. I believe you all received sheet ARB, which would have a roof plan. Actually, have two roof plans. I believe it had the first submission roof plan as well as this alternate roof plan. Because there was another item that was brought up, and that was looking at ways of lowering this particular roof line. So that is represented in the second roof plan that we see, the new shed roof at the back of the house.
What was the drawing number that was on?
It's the very last drawing. Should be the very last.
Yep. Got it. I looked at it, and I just... Yep.
Yeah, so this was the original submission roof plan, right, and this is the alternate. So this is a shed roof coming off of this ridge, where this one had a higher ridge. Yep. So a couple of the other minor things that you'll notice on the rear elevation. We went ahead and put lattice panels and things that frame underneath the deck, which is a comment from the board. And then finally, these elevations are shown with a 6-inch placard siding versus a 7-inch shake siding. And I know that the board wanted to see it, and we did it. However, my clients still do feel fairly strongly about the shake siding, but I just wanted to get that out there. But I did think that this at least responded to some of the concerns and the comments, and seeing it both ways, I'm sure would be helpful for the board.
By any chance you have examples of materials?
I do. Just for the shape and the color.
Yeah, it says,
Yeah.
and that's the plan.
No, the placard is just standard 6-inch placard.
What was the window color, frame color?
White.
White.
The windows will all
Yep.
be white.
The same as the trim, right?
Yes.
Same color, or?
Yes. All the trim will be white, the shutters will be, shutters will be black, and a wood grain stain on the door.
We already addressed with them as far as the roof is
Yes.
concerned.
Yeah. Yep.
And the issues were raised about the clapboard versus, do you have any comments on that?
Yep.
I mean, I will say again, I do think the clapboard is preferable, in my own opinion, especially because of the type of shake that you selected, which is the vinyl shake as opposed to another material. Be interested to see what others think.
The clapboard is strong preference.
So is your, just to be clear, is your client amenable to the clapboard, or are you showing us just because we asked to see it?
Well, I showed it to you because you asked for it, obviously. We did go back to the supply houses, we looked at other houses, they still feel fairly strongly about the shape, but they also know that this house needs to start construction at some point.
Did you look at the narrower clapboard as
We
well?
did. We did.
In the final?
Yeah, we preferred the wider just because of the height of the wall.
I know you have a lot of mass there.
Yeah. I think the 6-inch gives it the most authentic.
It's probably more appropriate in that case.
Well, if we were to approve this tonight, on the proposed exterior materials on the drawings, it's showing vinyl clapboard with 6-inch exposure. In order to approve it any other way, and I will entertain or listen to any board member that doesn't have an opinion one way or another on clapboard versus shakes, we'll have to make changes.
May I ask why? May I ask why why one siding would be preferable to the other? They're both aesthetically pleasing. They're both serving the same purpose.
We're talking about historical accuracy as far as the houses in the neighborhood.
Yes, but there are 3 or 4 houses on the block that have shakes and shingles.
We can't speak to them because they're not in front of us.
Yes, but if there are other shake-style houses on the block, it would fit in with the look of the neighborhood, with the look of the block.
So,
Part of, sorry.
go, no,
I
go
know, I
ahead,
really
no,
pref-
you spoke
okay.
first.
I prefer to hear what Ken has to say, but I will say that, I mean, just to backtrack, I mean, really where we came from is the massing of this house, right? In comparison to where you're starting and also where it sits on the block, as well as how it looks in relation to the other houses. So when we look at the drawings, at least from my own personal preference, I look at everything you've presented, the location, what you're starting from, where you're going, what you're trying to obtain, what your design objectives are. You have a lot going on. This is a big house with a lot of different roof lines, a lot of materials. You have a stone face, you've got shingles, you've got vinyl, you've got a lot of roof, and it's our responsibility to look at it and say, how does it look in keeping with the neighborhood, and especially with all you're trying to achieve and the scale of this house. So when I take a step back and I look at shingles versus shakes versus clapboard, whatever the materials, there's something about the clapboard that I'm saying that it looks like it's more keeping with the neighborhood in light of the size of this house that you're trying to build.
You're saying keeping with the neighborhood, and we just mentioned that there's 3 other houses on the block that have the same style, so.
I think we also mean in keeping with the character of Irvington and, you know,
It's
what
a
we
very
feel.
small block, and there's 3 houses that have exactly what we're talking about. So I think this is in the spirit of keeping with the neighborhood.
Again, if it was in keeping with the neighborhood, then we're also looking at the scale of the house, what you're trying to achieve here in terms of the size of the house and in relation to the other houses. But look, we hear you, and that's why I
And we
appreciate you being here
considered
tonight.
what you said when we did
the
those.
materials, we showed us the drawings with it, and we strongly do prefer the way
Do you have the
shake
elevation,
style looks of the
other,
house. We
of
think
the
it
other
has more
buildings in the
character.
block? You had that previously. Yeah. So I'll just talk to it. And I do see a potential, but I'm proposing something which is not what we're here to do. All right, so. There you have it there. Right. So the other houses that have that shape are not in the traditional form of a ridge beam, sort of very traditional hip roof house. And they're more of a mass that's being carved up into individual elements. It's a different language than the language of the village. If you walked around and see the village houses, that's the context that we find ourselves in, and they either have clapboard. The one thing that they do will sometimes have a shake or a different shingle is under the eaves. So there'll be a break on the mass of the house or under the eaves at the top, in the front of the house, or on the dormers, they'll have a decorative shingle or shake. It's sort of.
So, right across the street to the right is a white house
Which
that
house
is
is that?
fully white shingled.
I believe it's this one. 44.
Was it 44? That one is completely white shingles.
And those were not the shingles that would be done in the historic house or in the historic district, which you're not
Not in.
but it's in keeping with the village and what we've been all working towards in the village.
And then the house directly across the street from us has a mixed shake.
There's
And clapboard siding.
I think what we're doing is defining context as a larger context of Irvington and the town and these historic buildings. You've chosen to sort of, I'll call it, correct the house. Your architect has come in and he's done this very elegant design, hip roof. It's a large house. It's now a larger house, and so these scale elements help that scale. the shingle is sort of just a uniform surface that goes, especially with the vinyl, it becomes a uniform surface, and it just seems scaleless. It lacks the sort of scale of those things. And I'm speaking about the vinyl. When we talked about the real shingles, there's a sort of variety that can be put in by the tradesman who does the work. And then we might have suggested that there be I'm sorry, I don't know the full names of these, but the trim beam, a trim piece running around the house to separate the upper portion of the house from the lower portion of the house.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I can articulate what we all feel is just, the town as a whole and the character of the house in terms of what we spoke about the last time.
So, what we have in front of us now, or what you're asking as far as the application is to approve is one clapper with 6-inch exposure. Is that not what you want us to vote on?
I think my clients are very concerned about starting construction as soon as possible. If the board likes to buy a piece of the clapper siding versus the shake, they prefer to get approval than not.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the application?
So move.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last continuation would be ARB 16-84, 44 South Ferris Street, Barnard. Fence. I will recall that at the end of the meeting, if in fact they show up. Okay, we'll go to new matters now. It will be ARB 16-96, 2 Cindy Lane, Fetner, addition. Anybody who's going to speak on the issue, please, into the microphone, give us your name and relationship to the applicant.
Good evening, Stephen Bassini, the architect for the owners of 2 Cindy Lane, Michael Fetner and Lori Fetner. Michael's here with us this evening. The genesis of this project was for an addition to the upper floor of this bi-level raised ranch for the purpose of creating an additional bedroom. Right now, there's only 2 bedrooms on this floor. And there's an office and a small bedroom downstairs. They have a growing family. They have a daughter right now, and they'd like to create an extra bedroom upstairs so that they can house children upstairs, obviously. They also only have 1 bathroom right now upstairs with a bath in it. The other one is just a powder room. So they would also like a children's bath upstairs. So the genesis was to create an addition here and also to expand the master bedroom, which is upstairs, and create a little storage in there. Right? We had originally a bump out to the side here. There's no storage, obviously this low roof and no basement. There's no storage. So we went to the planning board and the zoning board. There were coverage issues. So we've scaled down to what you currently see here. Right now, once again, it is a bi-level ranch. It's got T111 siding, stained painted brown, a very low-pitched roof, white trim, white doors and windows, all casement windows. This is the side here and the rear of the house. The fence is brown. Everything is really brown on the house. The part of the proposal also, not just the space and the volume, was to beautify the house and to create something a little more appealing. And this was an example of a house as far as the color scheme that they had liked throughout the process, and we tried to mimic with the elevations. You'll see here what we did essentially was to create a volume here and pull this out. This is about a 9-foot addition going out the front of the house, which allowed us to create 2 bedrooms here, 2 children's bedrooms, and then the master bedroom off in the back here, where it currently is, with a 2-foot overhang in the back. In pulling this out, it also then kind of hid the front entrance, so I pulled out the volume of this, of the portico to try and create a volume. You can actually see it when it comes out past this. The approach of the house is about 100 feet from Cindy Lane. It's a 5-house development in Cindy Lane. It's a little cul-de-sac. I'm assuming you've been there or you know where it is. This house is set, like, again, 100 feet back, slightly up the driveway, and your approach is from here, from this corner. So as you come up this way, I was worried that you wouldn't see the entrance as well, so we pulled that volume out. Instead of just having this continuous low-pitched gable run this way, we tried to turn this volume around. So we're actually, instead of seeing this elevation, the gable elevation here on the side of the house, we end up seeing the slope of this with a shed dormer on the side, and then really create something nice in the front there and raise it up. Because there's no storage now, we had a bump out originally here because of the zoning. We raised the roof a little bit, and I have an 11-12 pitch on the roof over here to create a walk-up attic so that they can provide storage up there. Right now they have to crawl in their 312 pitch roof. The materials would be a James Hardy material, which I'm sure you're familiar with. These are the samples of the colors. It's a light mist, gray, shake up top. It's brought several ones. The light mist is advertised actually as a gray, which you can see right there. That's the lighter color. That material also has hints of blue, and you see it in different lighting, which you can see similar in this picture right here. It comes with a light blue when it hits a certain lighting inside the house, and then a darker gray shake on the top in the gables, and then also on the dormer on the sides as well. They like the 4-inch exposure. I think that works well with the height of the house here. I've broken up this so that you don't have a continuous volume going up into the gable, and we like the reveal of the roof returning instead of just a skirt board across there. We did want to break up the elevations going across here with a skirt board. This is a 1x8, and that is the James Hardy siding. So all of the trim would be white as well, smooth white. So you have a 1x8 here. On the corner trims you have 1x6. Around the windows you have 1x4. And then under here underneath the rake you have a 1x4 as well. And the entire house would be re-sided. All the windows would be retrimmed. Existing windows in the back of the house over here, and then this elevation would remain. Actually, there's 2 sliders here, 2 sliding doors going out to the porch. But all these other windows would be new. They're going to be Anderson 400 series Woodwright casement windows in some picture. The garage doors would be a composite insulated garage door. All of the entrances would be a fiberglass composite entrance. This would be the fiberglass as well, all in the darker gray. The dark gray to try and mimic the shake up the top here. So you'd have dark gray entrances here, here in the back, and then your main entrance as well. And then at the side over here, this actually faces, this is the closest that they are. I think you have the copies of the site plan in there. This is the closest they are to the neighbors. On this side over here, there's your driveway, and then there's about another 20 feet to the neighbor's house. There is a very large growth of evergreens there, but just the same, they really didn't want much fenestration down on the lower level, so we just have the lights in the top of the garage doors, and then a 1/4 light here. In the back, decided to go a half light because that goes out to their backyard. And obviously the same thing here, they would like some privacy, but they still want to be able to see out when they're up in their upper level. And you're only, the main level, as you know, in the bottom level, you can see down to the main entrance. So they like the big window here so you can see out in the front yard.
Is that a new front door?
Yes, it is. The existing front door is actually off-centered with just a large side light on the side here. So we've chosen to try and center it in the space in the volume on the interior, and then create 2 side lights.
One
Yes.
criticism that I had is in trying to picture the existing without actually being in front of the building. Normally, what we ask for is especially as far as elevation is concerned. But that's our main focal point is what it actually looks like from a neighbor's point of view. And without having the existing elevations, to compare where you're going from and where you're going to, it was very hard to picture what it is you're doing. With these pictures, it helps a little bit, but I'm not sure I'm totally comfortable with the way it's shaking out. You could perhaps, once again, go through, comparatively.
Absolutely. Right now the volume is just, it's 2 boxes. You've got your upper level here and your lower level here. There's a 2-foot cantilever on this side and this side. the entrance is bumped out. In the bi-level, you've got that stair coming down, so in order to provide space at the bottom of the stairs, this front entrance is bumped out, and this roof just slopes down at the same 312 pitch. The idea right here is to take this volume, it's about 20 feet wide, and pull it out 9 feet. That also expands the garage down below, so you'd have one elevation here that comes up, instead of having any type of cantilever here. This volume comes out 9 feet, and then we're putting a gable on it. So we're taking a gable vault volume straight through this side of the house, 20 feet wide by the width of the house, going right through here. So this part gets bumped out, and then there's a porch right here, a stoop with stairs coming down, which would remain. There's a foundation on the sides. What we did was put 2 columns, one here, and then we brought out another gable volume slightly past the main volume so that you can still see the entrance as you're coming up the driveway. This here and this roof is existing. It's actually covering the porch over here, which is why it's extended out past that. This roof really would not change. The intention is to just dye this in, put some valleys here, and have that dye into the main roof. We didn't want to raise the whole volume of the house. It's a nice cathedral ceiling right now in the living and the dining area. The kitchen is just changing on the inside, but that roof would remain the same. So on the side here, where now you have this gable elevation, we're actually bringing the line of the fascia along here. So actually, you're actually lowering the height of that. By bringing the fascia here at the same level here, you're lowering the height of that elevation, and it's starting to pitch back away from you. So from the neighbor's view and from the approach as well, it's actually less of a volume as you look at the side of the house. This right here, this portion, originally we had a much larger addition anticipated, but it was pulled out. Right now what we have is a 2-foot cantilever. So similar to what you'd have here, or what you have here that's disappearing, would be back in here. This would be a 2-foot cantilever, which is why that shadow line is there. That allows the 2 bedrooms in the front for the children, a hallway with a stairwell, and then a modest master bedroom with some small closets in there as well. So that is why that 2-foot volume was added in the back. So this now pulls out, and instead of having this vast one-faced elevation in the back, you have this being pulled out into a gable elevation, and in addition to that, a small bay actually with standing seam on the top. So that really will create some nice shadow lines here and shadow lines here, and also a shadow line in the back of the house, instead of, again, just having that continuous long ranch face. There are no cantilevers here. There's a small porch off the back which wraps around, and the proposal right now is to have the deck continue here and create a small deck here with stairs down. Right now there's stairs coming from here, and the only way to get to that is to go through from the kitchen to the dining room, out the side of the house, and then come back around here to the front of to the backyard where their pool is. They really wanted the door out of the kitchen and the eating area. Took it out to a deck where they could serve food, and then go right down the stairs and have the children go right to the pool. So this deck is a new volume as well, and it casts a little shadow on the elevation here. So I think that what we've tried to do is really pull out this elevation, raise the gable, pull this out, and create volume and shadows on the front of this house, in front of this normally boring ranch house. The dormer in the attic here is to create a little more light in there and a little more usable space. We have an FAR, obviously, we need to stay below. I also did not want to raise this too high. We're well below our requirement for the height. Still just didn't want to raise it too high. What it is right now with this 312 roof, to raise it even higher would have looked awkward. But I still needed to add a little room on there.
So the main roof is still going to be at the same height it is now?
This will be the same, yes, correct. All we're doing is cutting in. Sheet A107, I think, shows the roof plan, so you can see how that ties in right now and creates the valleys. And there'll be a small cricket right in here, but it's really hidden. You can't hardly see it at all. It's just because this gable is meeting this gable at a different angle. So there's a small cricket which is shown in A107 as well, but that's concealed in here. You'll just have a line right there, and it'll pitch right to the leaders.
As far as the deck goes, the deck is going to be the same material as the existing deck? Is the existing deck staying and just adding on to it? What's going on with
that? That is correct. They like the feel of real wood. We'd like to keep that same feel. So it'll be a pressure treated, right now it's stained brown. We're going to go with the aesthetics of the house, and we're going to stain it a gray, which actually I have the materials here. This is serving as an existing and also material. This would be the shake panel. This would be the clapboard. Samples of as well. And then the shingles example here, but it's also on the board there.
There's a gray.
I'm sorry, a brown fence. It's still, I want to
mark up here.
well, I don't want to mark that up. I know this was done not too long ago, but this would be the stone foundation, around the foundation. So 1-inch veneer. And that would also mimic the brown, the grays and the silvers, but what it also does is it picks up some of the blues that's in the light mist siding, and if you see there's also some brown in there, because we don't plan on doing restaining the entire fence. The fence circumvents the property in the backyard because of the pool, and so that earthy brown feel going through the trees and the grass I think works better, so this will also help to pick up that. But the deck would be gray, as you see here, the shingles would be a gray, and then the siding, the standing seam roofing would be a dark bronze.
But to your point, I actually was surprised there's no existing elevations. Are we to have that for the application?
Not, I mean, there's no mandatory, I mean, it just helps us understand so we don't.
You're right, I apologize, I made the assumption that it's important that you, the planning board, they go and visit the site as a group, I made that.
We
that was
do,
my
but at the
mistake.
same time,
It's good to have a comparison, I understand.
it's real simple to put it, side by side. It's just,
Okay,
even
then, yes.
on two separate drawings, we can flip back and forth to get an idea. It helps us tremendously with the amount of applications.
I understand.
And then do you have a window and door schedule? 'Cause I didn't.
That's what I was just looking for.
Yes, on sheet A100, I believe it is.
We started one of
I'm sorry, a window and door schedule, I have a window schedule right
Yeah.
here.
So what are the
The door-
windows?
Anderson Woodwright 400 series casement windows.
Here, right here. A100.
I'm gonna make some comments.
Please.
So if you pull it down, so there's this funny thing going on with your proposal, is it's as if you reverse time, and there was an old house that was on one side of the site, and then on the other side you had this, big cathedral ceiling, family room. And so when I see this and you're sort of, it'll come as a consistent element, it'll be consistent with that, I see some inconsistency. So if you were, the idea of using the casement windows seems a little bit out of character with the roof and the shape and even the imagery that you've shown us there, which I don't know if it really helps you, the bay window and and I'll talk about the bay window for a second. So now you're using this language, it's sort of traditional Irvington language, peak roof and horizontal shingle, horizontal stone foundation, which we don't see, we see a little bit of, but that's okay. And then there's all this casement window work. Why not the double hung? Why not the language of the traditional house that you've kind of created?
Two reasons. One was originally we were trying to match the windows, but then it became, through a conversation with the clients, they like the visibility. They like being able to see their yard. They don't like the sash, the intermediate sash of a double hung. They don't like grills. They really don't like anything. They wanted large, expansive glass. Yeah, it was all about visibility.
There's this funny language thing going on. I'm not sure I would totally object to it on the side with the
Garage.
family room, where the family room is, or, there's this mix of language. It's like the garage has this traditional divided like sort of language. Why not just be consistent about it all the way around the house? The second, I don't think you're doing as much service with this because it's got the double hung windows and that's the language of that facade, right? The 8/1, the copper roof, right, which is nice. We all have these little bay windows that pop up all over the village. And then it's sort of tucked underneath the eave, which I don't know why it doesn't let so on the bay window, you have a horizontal line and the bay window is going above that line. So that's the strong line that's running around the house. You've done a good job, you've carried it all the way around and suddenly this little copper roof pops over. I would suggest that that's the strong line of this addition over here. So that's that. And then the last thing is the entry piece, this pop-up piece. I went up and I drove around, and there's lots of little entry pieces that have been added over time to these houses, which were probably done in the 70s, I'm assuming. And none of them pick their roof up above the roof with, again, the language of the village where there are these covered entry before you walk in the house. And you go to the Cricket and you're going to a lot of framing about it. I don't think it would be any worse for wear. In fact, I think it would be clearer that whatever this element is that marks the entrance, you have these columns, that it would come out and either be in the shape of the bay window, the bottom of it, and then have a peaked roof above it, But right now, it's sort of all the pieces come together around that piece. And it is my fault, because I'm kind of looking at it over here. It looks attenuated.
You said, you mentioned the entry, but now you're on the bay one. I'm sorry, I
I moved from the
misunderstood.
bay one into the entry.
That's what I thought, but where are you pointing right now when you say it looks attenuated?
I'm talking about the entry.
Entry,
piece.
okay.
And then again, I'm sure it was a square footage issue, the shed roof dormer that you have on that side. It's just not seen from the street other than in profile. I might try and play it out, but I wonder if you would have more success with it. It just feels either it's not going up to the peak of the roof, or it sort of just feels like clomped onto the side of this thing. Is it longer? Is it 2 windows? No. Is it something about I can't tell what's. It feels like a poor addition to what seems to be a well-proportioned volume that you've created at one side of the house.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Back to the beginning of this, may I comment on that? I know you have other comments.
So I gave you 3 things, right? Which was the bay window, just dropping it down, the entry piece, and then the window types, right? Exactly.
You mentioned, I think you started by talking about 2 different sides of the house.
Yeah.
And how we wanted to create a volume here separate from what was there. It was really the purpose, we really started with that. Didn't want to alter a large portion of that house. The volume inside is, structure is there. To have to try and reconstruct this or redo that was a budget purpose originally, and then it really just was a volumetric purpose. We really wanted to make this the volume. The casement windows, again, are a preference of visibility. I don't see that this is, I understand what you're saying about this not necessarily helping us. This is a color scheme, and granted, I know you're saying you may look at it and say that the 8 over is...
I think the roof helps. I think it's, the trim moving around. The way the roof is expressed with the 2 different colors.
It helps our case, I get it. And then you're saying that the windows, though, however, look nice, because I don't see that the double hungs are integral. Oh, sorry.
They are. I think, again, it's just to the previous conversation. We talk about the village and the character of the village, and you're seconds away from the center of the village or part of the village. It sort of seems like if you're trying to bring back this language, right, that you would be consistent about it. It's a little, the little windows, the little charm elements, like up in the attic. If you go around the block, almost everyone has a little bit different expression. Some are square, some are gridded windows, but there's always an expression about that in a kind of carpenter's language. And it's just sort of like, okay, let's sort of follow that through with the pieces. The same thing with the trim underneath, right? The trim underneath the bridge, right? The eaves.
Yeah.
Seems like it wants to have a little bit more trim to it. If that's
I was trying not to.
Yeah, okay. But you've done it elsewhere, right?
Well, but we didn't do it. We didn't do it along here. We tried to keep this simple. I created this in here because it is the main gable. All the gable elevations
right.
are created
now the main
an additional rake.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to do it more. We really wanted simple lines. I mean, these are all flat 1x8 trim. I didn't want to do dentals or anything like that and going into that.
And that's the language of the village.
Well, let me ask you. When you say, I understand. I've done houses on Riverview, and I understand the ornamentation. But the question.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just be consistent about it. These are minor things.
When you say consistent, you say consistent with the village or consistent with the house.
Look at the eave there. If you go around the meadow under, not the eave, the rake. Thank you.
It's still the same.
No, but there's no trim piece on yours.
There is. There's a 1x4. I had mentioned it. I'm sorry. It's that extra detail right in. It's a shadow line. But that's it right there. It's a 1x4. You've got the rake. You've got the fascia right here, and you've got the. the rake, and then you've got that trim right there.
So maybe it's a little bit more substantial.
I can make it a 1x6 to make it a little bit, I also don't like reducing the volume of that gable, and then you lose the shakes. Yeah. But that's something we can do as well. But if I may, to the point, I don't think that we were departing from one side of the house to the other. I understand what you're saying, maybe departing from the character of the village, but also I know the village from having done several projects. I don't think that there's a lot of bi-level raised ranches. On this street, there are 4 of them. This one is departing from those and trying to beautify that neighborhood. There's 1-5 Cindy Lane that was built, and it is much different than the ranches right there. And it's really a departure of a colonial, and actually, I think we're going more closer to that. So actually, I believe we're trying to pick up the character of what they did and run with it.
I think that they've all been dressed as more towards a colonial, traditional.
Correct, but also within the limitations of the house itself, we're not creating a volume that they created at 5 Cindy. We don't have that
That's the big
ability.
one, right?
Yeah, that's the big. We don't have that ability. We don't have the coverage and the variances that they were granted. So I believe that the character of the house, we really try. I'm not.
I would separate the two issues. The volume, I'm not asking for more volume,
Okay.
We've agreed on that.
Okay. And as far as the entrance and the bay, you're saying you didn't like the bay, or I'm sorry, you were saying you didn't like the
So
roof
I'm
over
looking
the
at
bay?
5 Cindy, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
sorry,
no,
the
this is
bay.
2 Cindy.
Sorry, the bay, all I'm talking about is the copper roof there, the copper piece.
We can scale that down, or actually maybe bring it down below the eave. You're saying you don't want it to interrupt.
Maybe, I'm not supposed to pick up the pencil, but perhaps it's just a straight eave that comes out.
That's fine. A little more of a shed instead of,
Yes.
okay. The idea of the bay, I don't know if there was any hesitation on the board, but the bay really is because of our limitations. We had a small little balcony out in the back. It was a beautiful little thing, but the volume and once again the coverage, they really want some place to be able to sit in their room. So we created the bay window where there's a little window bench and they can look out in the backyard. That was why that is there. I think it also adds some beauty and volume to the back of the house. But yeah, I can revise that and make more of a shed.
I'd say look on the village and how those bays are done. Even the next house that we're going to look at, the bay doesn't do this. It literally sits as a bay. Is that the issue? Is it can't be?
No,
be done the
we can frame this differently underneath.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to be any lower or higher than what it is right now.
I'm just talking about a bay.
Okay, we're trying to make, yeah. You're saying bringing it down to here.
Yeah. And have trim pieces that are, the return. I have to hand this over to my colleagues.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure, I don't think I can, and you know why? Because of the coverage issue again, because this is a window. If I bring down and build out the exterior wall to the perimeter of the bay,
Line of the bay.
but it's a volume, and that, I don't know. I'm worried, we were very tight here with the coverage. I don't want to do anything to go against our resolution, but I
I
can
don't
look
think it's
into,
an issue if it's.
I could look into that again. That's fine, yeah, I understand. And I have to say, going back, I mean, the entry, it's simple. We're dealing on the existing porch, we're dealing with the existing width, and we're dealing with an existing roof, so I tried.
I'm not discouraging what you're saying, but again, this is just simpler, it's seen as part of that kind of pattern book language of front porches.
I understand.
Here, you can.
And my comments really, the reason I was looking for the window schedule was along the same lines. I was curious why you picked these windows and
Right.
you were replacing all of them, and I also felt that maybe there was a better choice. But I hear what you're saying, I understand.
We're not replacing the wall.
I understand.
You like the type of window,
I understand.
visibility?
Yes. And then the front door as well, I didn't see it on the schedule, I see
I'm
what
sorry.
you're proposing, and also lighting, I know that you've been discussing lighting, but I didn't see lighting
There's
on
going to be
this.
recessed underneath here, and I can, yeah, we actually,
Back,
sorry, they
the
don't show it.
garage.
There'll be lights, we have it on the plan.
You do have it on, okay.
Yes, we
Because
have
if
it.
you're gonna come back to us, I would suggest we could see that as well.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
You mentioned the stone foundation, you said you don't see that much from everything, I'm not sure if that was
It's fine. It's generally lower, it tends to be lower.
I understand, it's less of a, but in this case, because of the
Like more like
ranch.
a water course or whatever.
There's landscaping in front of this, which will continue, there's landscaping here, so you'll be masked, to some extent. And then the garage breaks it up a lot with the volume here, and the same in the back will be landscaping.
Time you walk around and look at the foundation, half of them are brick, half of them are rubble, it's rubble, it's been nice, the variety.
So yeah, the ones I did on Riverview were all stone.
And is your front entrance that railing? I can't see it that far.
It's a black wrought iron railing.
Okay, because that also, I don't see depicted on our drawing. Is it in the materials chart?
Depicted, it's only shown in the elevation, and I believe it's called out on the finishes.
It is?
Where is that list?
I'm sorry, right here on this elevation chart, and maybe it may not be, but in the front steps, wrought iron railings, dark gray, sorry, we had it a dark gray.
When you come
On this
back,
material list right here.
when you come back, bring the cut for the door, just as a.
Sure.
as a reference.
It's a fiber cut, you know the doors, but yeah, I'll bring you the cut for that door, sure.
And also, just a cut sheet for the lighting that's gonna be on the outside of the house?
Take care of that. Sconces, yes. Can I understand the bay, and we're gonna look into this, am I being directed to come with an alternate window? I mean, really, this is what, I tried to explain it, I'm not sure if, I don't wanna come back with something you were expecting me, not come back with something you're expecting me to come back with, but I really think the windows,
I would prefer the double hung, but that's at the front of the house.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a beautiful vision and a wonderful transformation. I think when I look at this profile, it's a little harder for me to see it from here, is that casement window in the bedroom, it doesn't feel like a bedroom, it doesn't feel like there's a break, it's almost like a family room or something on the other side of the house. So,
there is a large,
too many casements across the front.
there is a large, this is what the elevation looks like right now.
Right.
I think it's better than that.
You're splitting that up into,
Yeah.
is it currently two?
It's his one bedroom running this way now. Now it's going to be two bedrooms coming out 90 degrees. But this elevation, I think it's how it improved over that. We actually, that is
No,
one.
you've improved it, I think.
We created a volume of two, I thought.
What we saw that you were making it two bedrooms, so two bedrooms would each have a set of windows in them.
You do see that. I mean, that was,
Yeah.
okay, good.
But we're proposing that it be two double hung windows, paired.
And there's no picture, and that really is the idea. They want their children, daughter right now to be able to look out a big picture window to the front yard. They have 100 feet before a front yard. It's really to create that extra sash in there and only limit yourself to two windows.
No, two of two paired.
Right, two and then two, but this is still only two, but then just a double hung with no picture. I still need my egress, so this is an egress casement window actually, and if I do two double hungs, I don't have the opportunity for a picture. Again, it was about looking out to the front yard and creating that. I mean, we're not looking out on the street,
Double hung counts as egress.
but I can't get a picture in with a double hung. The double hung has to be wider to be egress, so I would only be able to fit two in that room, and I wouldn't get a picture in between them, because I only have 10-foot wide rooms.
What's that?
The current room has a picture with casement on the side.
I only have 10-foot wide rooms, so if I do a 3-foot window and a 3-foot window, I'm left with 2 feet on either side. I can't put a picture in the middle. That was what we were going for, was to create a picture of view. Okay.
Back to the existing house?
I'm sorry?
Could you go back to
Yeah, absolutely.
the existing house?
Woo. And actually, that's even off-center. And there's a whole row of windows down here. We really tried to divide. You see that all along there in the garage. Really tried to create symmetry, but still providing this look of having a large, expansive picture to look out. This is all, like I said, this is 100 feet of yard. Everyone else is 25, 30 feet off of the road. This is the unique.
We've shown the plans to the neighbors also. The neighbors are all supportive. They all like these plans.
It's a beautiful house. For me, it's not a deal breaker. I was just suggesting
Okay, no.
that. Probably,
I'm trying to listen to
personally,
everything.
I would have preferred the other, but now
Okay.
it's your house. So,
I don't have that much of a strong objection against that.
yeah, I feel the same way.
All right, so I guess that answered your question?
Thank you. But I do know I need to come back. We want to revisit, maybe look at this, and then also look at this, and then bring some samples of lighting, and then the door.
Are you, by the way, is the fence still gonna go where it's currently coming up to the house?
Tying into here and tying into here, yes. it will.
Okay, could you show us the fence?
Yeah.
Doing work.
On the elevations, you mean?
Yeah.
On these, yes, absolutely.
And then you have it in the plan, I know.
Yeah, it's on the site plan, it shows up
Yeah.
the tying in, but there it is right there, yeah. Here, and then that's actually in the back.
And you said you were going to show us an example of the railings, whether it be a photograph or...
Of these right here?
Well, that and I was talking about actually the front,
Yes, yes, I will provide you with a photograph of what we're intending for the rail, yes. The railings here are visible on better photographs, but I'll bring those, yes, absolutely, yep. And is that, second, I assume, first meeting in January?
there's no second
There's no
meeting in
second,
December,
okay.
so I think it's January 9th, I believe.
Good, I'll check with that, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Have a good holiday.
Thank you.
You want?
I'm gonna hold on to it since you're coming back. Thank you.
And the final new matter tonight is ARB 16-97, 20 South Buckeye Street, Cohen. Looking at it.
Approving a deck.
Is this your before?
Yeah.
we weren't originally going to.
It needs change. Douglas McClure, the architect for Owens at 20 South Buckout. There's two things in this project. There's an existing deck at the rear of the house, which is lovely. And we're removing it and replacing it with a deck exactly the same size, but a little more structurally sound. And then we're also replacing the fencing around the property and across the front. The front fence will match the picket fence adjacent to the property, the picket fence to the south, although it'll be a little higher because that fence is fairly low. And then along the perimeter, there's existing wire fences and a stockade fence. It's a mess. And we're going to replace that with a 6-foot privacy fence that's solid but open at the top.
Is it being painted or staying?
The fence? I don't know. We didn't discuss that. I was picturing it staying.
That was my question, actually.
The front fence would definitely be painted white, but the side fence, I'm going to recommend that it's stained just because maintenance-wise it'll.
It just wasn't clear.
Yeah. The deck railing, we're doing a simple railing, very similar to one on. Where am I here? Dutcher, Eckers, North Ecker. It's simple 1.5 verticals. Inch and a half verticals separated by 1.5 inch space in groups of 3, and then a 4-inch max space between them. The balusters will all be painted white, as well as the posts, but the top rail will be clear mahogany. And that's the extent of it.
I'm
good.
I like the rail design. I should speak to you.
Okay, I don't have any notes on my drawing, so everything else must have been okay, other than wanting another color of the fencing. Told me it was white, so I'm good to go. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want this back?
Okay. And finally to our informal discussion, ARB 16-85, 130 Main Street. Doug, you want? Oh, sure.
I was trying to turn it so you could see it.
Temperamental. You can see it, you can leave it there, we can see it from that.
Sure?
Yeah, from that direction.
How about now?
I'm gonna amp it up here. Okay.
Bob Riley, Bill Fitzgerald. Okay, I have a model which talks about scale, but I figured let me just review a few things on the plan that changed. Can I do that?
Sure, please.
Okay.
The red represents the existing building on the first floor. The only thing that we're touching, we're adding in the back, and we're adding a bump for the fireplace here. That's actually the existing first floor. There's the existing second floor, the extension of the bump. We are building around the side. So, thanks to Deborah, in her discussion about the atrium, I moved it from where it was because I had some dead space here. So I picked up 40 square feet that allowed me to take all of that stuff that was sticking out here inside. I was able to keep the same square footage. This is a very good spot because that's sort of that's the avenue that gets us back here, and that gets us upstairs, the lights coming in. You'll see that in the model. Okay, so the interesting thing is what this has generated. See now on the east face, we have the existing and that bump, which on the elevation looked like it was all one. It isn't. It's way back. I'll show you that in a minute. And that's sort of a negative space that I think it's important that you see the elevation is a classic one. And all of the other elements, so this is an adjustment I'd like to show you. The main element is to emphasize that. So let me get down the model.
Just one thing.
Let me. I can take them off. Okay.
Ken's already done that for you.
Huh?
Ken's already done that for you.
He had? Good. Hey, let me do it this way. Get rid of all of them and, yep. Why don't we get the model out? Is that a good time now?
Yes, but just,
Yes.
this is what I saw.
It isn't.
No, you see, I thought, my reaction when I built the model was, this, sorry. This is a little complicated. You remember all this, you know, the overhangs and so on? So when I started to, in the elevation, which we really didn't know how far, how back things were. So when I made the model, it became obvious that this side is the active side. You know, there, nobody is going down that side, but here's the part where all the action is on this side. And so I thought it would be, when I developed the design for the east face, it seemed natural that this should be an extension of that new design, and there's and we really are emphasizing the character of the existing. And of course, there's the section and showing and how that limbered up all the square footage to allow me to shift it. Want to see the model?
Please.
Pass it around.
Please, would you mind if we
Okay,
put it on the left?
good,
That'd be great.
good.
Thank you.
Remember, we're not seeing it as a helicopter. we're always down there. Our eye level, we're on the sidewalk, is really just at the deck level, okay? But some of the concerns were, what was the neighbor, how close is it? So that's the existing, that's exactly what we have. There's 2 major bushes in front, and we turn, and there's probably 3 windows on the side. Nothing really there. Then in the back, that's the garage. Okay? So, here we are. I will say a lot of this now is developed because how we're going to use the space. That's a wonderful view. And we can't get involved in a lot of windows. We're looking, I didn't bring the second part, which was the brick building is right here. So we can't, the windows are in position to help the plan, but you've got to see it, this is removable. You can look in there and get the shot this way, the barn door, and so on. Sure.
So when I'm looking at the north elevation here,
Yes.
what am I looking at in terms of, what is this, what's going on here?
Yeah. That's getting moved out. It's moving further out. When I did this 2 days ago, changing from I thought more complicated, and once you recognize the scale of this space, I think the new should have its own scale. And this emphasized the existing quality of the face. So that, one of the requirements was that Mrs. Fitzgerald wanted a bay window, okay? That position for the bay window is when it was further back. So I didn't have a chance to change that. That's going to move forward.
And what happens when it moves forward? What type of window will it be?
It's going to be exactly the same. This is going to be a void, and there will be, oh, sorry. Okay?
Say that again, I'm sorry, there will be a void and what?
All right, let me show you the plan, because the plan had not moved.
So this is where it was. Are
Yeah.
you pulling this out to this space?
Yes.
Oh.
This is moving out to, because here's what I saw. This is a better line than taking this line, that's where it was. That showed it coming using the E line. And I dropped it 3 feet. I mean, it's substantially lower.
So, just looking.
Can you explain that to me, Ken? Again, just a second.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, like I'm not following that
So the
piece.
plans that we got, there's been a slight change from this. So the plans that we have show this being pulled back, which is what we spoke about, this line being pulled back. But in working out the model, Riley sort of pulled it forward to in line up with the face of the building, or the face
Just the
of
roof, just the
Face
roof.
of the
yeah.
porch.
Just the roof.
Right. So
There
the
will
bay
still be
window
an
is underneath.
indentation, but the kitchen, the bay window will move, but not out to the front. We want that activity to be able to.
Do you carry that line? That seems like a very strong line. Does it carry all the way around, even on the east elevation? Because if you, it's, can you just?
From here, this way?
Yeah. Well, it looks like you have a datum line that runs all the way around.
I sort of thought I wanted a little change from,
Okay, keep going.
if it was stucco,
I don't know if it's a function of the model building, but
it's probably the model.
but you did put the wood piece.
Well,
here.
that's because when I made it 1 floor at a time,
I see.
I wanted to
Okay.
give it a little depth. I mean,
It just seems like a very strong line, what you've done. So
Yeah.
when it comes around here, and you make this face coincident with that line, it seems
it was this line that I'm building.
right. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering, why not push this line just slightly back, or even further back, from where it was?
I can do that. I can't. Remember, it was way back.
Yeah.
And
yes.
it was 2 foot. It was back when we were looking at an elevation. So as I
And
made...
you've made it a standing seam roof, right? So it
Yes.
stands out from that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If you think, I thought that the touching, the continuity was important. If you say, move it back,
Yep.
I can do that.
Again, it's as we spoke about, now you've emphasized the center of the original house.
Right. And of course, there's 80% that's all, that's original wall, and this is, of course.
Is the deck in the original position, or is it much deeper?
I'm sorry.
This front piece, is this where it was
No, the porch was only 5 feet.
in the original house?
Yeah.
Oh, right now it is.
Right now.
Oh, so you're pulling out the porch too?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna make a suggestion. Just hear me out. There's something about these houses that, whether it's 6 feet or 8 feet or whatever, we all know you want to have enough porch that you can sit on.
Sure.
Right? But you've done a really great job of making this your new sitting area out here.
We'll ask our client for a minute. I think.
Of course.
No, I think they like the enclosed part of being on this porch. I'm not sure. I personally think they could have an umbrella here. They could find themselves sitting there. It's got to be big enough to have a decent chair. I mean, you look at the McVicker house.
Yeah,
It's a baby dollhouse, and the 5 foot is. In fact, this one with the 5 foot original one was probably they never sat on it. It was get out of the rain and take your boots off. I mean,
So how deep is this?
11. 5.5 to 11. But it's the scale that counts. I mean, I bet if I reworked that to be 5 feet, you'd say that looks like half a hand.
I think it's taking away some from the house, but that's not like.
But there's the house.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't neglect that. We want that to be the new.
Are you talking about sitting in front of the bay window?
I'm sorry.
You're talking about sitting in front of the bay window?
Yeah.
How are you going to get there? There's no door.
No, not coming out from the kitchen. Just having the deck accessible. You can be out in the sun or under the. I think the scale. If I made this model with a 5 foot deck, you'd say this thing is 4 fingers. It's.
11 feet is deep, though, it's north facing.
I'm sorry.
Thinking about
It is
that?
deep. Yeah, I like it.
I mean, we have a porch, and we have a porch, we have a
I
porch
got it,
street,
I got
so,
it.
know.
I like
Yes.
the deep porch.
Yeah, take it.
Yeah.
I like that's the living
It's a
area.
room, yeah, it's a room.
So we were looking at that.
The.
No, you're just looking at that side.
When you want, we can remove it, and I like it to look into the windows and see the inside space. See why some of the forms are where they are.
I love this side here, it's a shame it faces the brick building as far as
Thank
I'm
you, thank you.
concerned, but,
Actually, everything fell together once I got that side. And because I was able to move the atrium out of the way, then I was able to get rid of all the square footage that everybody was talking about in the baggage.
Roof on the board? Flat roof?
Same dimension.
Yeah, I can wash the windows on the second floor. It's like a tar roof, but it's actually, well, I don't care what it is, but I would prefer a little bit of a slope, because it
Well, you can have,
all,
yeah,
it just gets leaves and
there's a
everything.
pitch there now. In fact, I know
So
there
what's
is.
the finish? What was?
I have to get a.
But you can walk on it,
What
outside windows on the second floor.
Can you
Want it?
Can you
Yeah.
walk us through this?
Yes.
What you're attempting to?
is this a set of doors right there?
Yeah, like barn doors. You know, sort of garage barn doors in there. You can. This is the TV room,
Uh-huh.
and let's
But glass?
look. Yeah, that's a windmill. So look in there and look that way. See, and that's got a beautiful view. That's looking at Benny's building and
So these
It
are,
reminds you of looking out over the ocean. It's so beautiful.
stop.
okay.
Yes.
So just again, I'm sorry I'm not seeing it as clearly. So these are barn doors,
No, that little guy right there.
this here.
Yeah, that's as much glass as I can get, the one that you put your finger through.
This is just gonna be open, right,
Yeah, it
glass,
will-
and then this is the door that's gonna slide.
See, I want to keep that whole blue texture,
Uh-huh.
I didn't realize the deck was clean.
not having it all glass there.
Right.
So it's two doors, maybe with divided lights up on top, you know.
Mhm. You guys following that?
You know, it's sort of a step forward about the conversation we talked about where these are accretions over time. And that side of the house I'm convinced about. The east side, the west, the south also, though I wonder, this is more an architectural comment, more light, or if other small windows showed up there, I don't think it would be.
Are you talking now the south side?
The south side, yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Or skylights or
What I
whatever
didn't show with the
happens.
back neighbors, it's a little tight.
Yeah.
There's,
Yeah, I'm
that's
just-
a good view.
Yeah.
Oh, let me turn it this way.
But I just think you got South Light, you have this roof up here, skylights, whatever, it could be quite, and I think that's, again, so the only thing I think is the depth of the porch, because I think you have this area out here, and then I can see that
Nothing
you're
wrong with-
working this. You're
Huh?
working this.
You know how many.
I know
how
you work
many-
this. I can see the
I've been
rebuilds.
through. If I peel that away,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm back here. You can imagine how
Yeah.
silly it looked.
No. And the bay windows, a chamfered corner, bay window, and a kitchen. That's really nice. I frankly think you could pull it further out than where it is now.
Which way?
Further north, if that's what you wanted to do.
Thank you.
But this piece here,
I'll
just-
move it. How much? 2 feet enough? Don't go back too far. Then all of a sudden I lose some of that.
Well, I think what you're thinking of is that this is more like a sort of, I hate to say mansard, but it's just a straight metal roof or some other material, and then you have the window that's going into it.
When I really got into the model, I found this a little too complicated.
Yeah.
And
But, okay, I'm gonna say one last thing, but
Yes.
I'm not sure why, as you've done here, where you have these elements,
yes,
that element doesn't stop here, and this pulls back, and then,
because I can't spare 5 square feet.
I've heard that, yes.
No, I mean,
I don't think I've heard you.
Oh, no, I mean, it's, remember, I don't have any attic or anything.
Yeah.
Some of these I need for, just to be able to take some ductwork
Yep.
around.
Can I see that slide again?
Just felt like the porch is so deep. I don't know, 8 feet, 6 feet. I haven't done my, it's just new, it's new from what we saw in the package.
I know. I mean, the minute I was able to get rid of, because the saddlebags worried everybody.
Yep.
So the minute I was able, and all those diagonals, the minute
I take a look at I hate to always be self-referential, but the porches, there's a new porch on Croton. There's our porch on Croton, 18 and 14.
Where is that now?
Just off of Main Street, off Croton Place.
Oh, well, Croton Place, I didn't know.
Right,
I
there's a
thought you
couple
meant
new
Croton.
decks. I mean, maybe you look at it and you see what those decks are like, because they're all sittable.
I want a big deck.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
he does.
And there's that deck that's off out into the sun, for sure, right?
I'm not sitting in the sun.
He's not sitting in it.
So-
He's got his chair all the way
That's
down.
strictly for flowers.
He's on the right side when you come up the stairs.
What is the setback?
Well, I was gonna say do the whole.
I'm sorry, what is the setback now from Main Street? With that extra 5 or 6 feet coming out?
It's, I don't know exactly. I could tell. Let me look.
It's above what it needs to be.
Oh, much. No, you actually, it's 0 on Main Street. You can go all the way out. Then I get caught with coverage. I'm well within coverage and within, know, the minute we got involved in never going higher than the ridge, man, this changed shape pretty quickly.
That's probably 40 feet.
I'm searching for as much ways to run my HVAC. Let me tell you our complication. We would love to get on the December planning board. And all we need from you to get on the planning board is to say that we meet the demolition clause.
Well, here's the problem that I have with that. I'm going to ask the,
Okay. You see, we're
Village
in
Board
a
of Trustees want to see
catch-22.
it. Some of us on the board are of the opinion that that decision is made by the building department. In the way we read the code, that everything for us happens after that determination has been made. That's the way I read it. I don't know how you see it, or whether or not you've even given it much thought, but.
I think the process is always was imagined that the building department would determine if it was a demolition or not, because of determining the amount of wall and structure change and stuff, and then after that, everything waterfalls to your process.
That's the way we read it. I've only talked to 2 out of the 4 of us, but.
I agree. I think what has been communicated, though, is not clear, because I think the building inspector is asking us to make a determination whether this meets the definition of demolition, which I do not think is appropriate
No,
for the ARB.
the law says very clearly, I have any portion of the facade, decks, anything that faces the street is called demolition. And it goes to you guys first before we can go take any next step.
I beg to differ. And I know
Okay,
that-
no, I hope so, because we don't even have a mechanism to get us. And we can't go back to the planning board.
You
until-
can
the
as
law
far
says
as-
till you guys bless, imagine demolition. I mean, that's a complete cover for an architectural review that says whether they like your answer to the historic district.
Well, I beg to differ as well, but what I want to be clear on here is that there's a procedure to follow, and my reading of Chapter 9 is that we do not make the determination whether this meets the definition of demolition or
Okay.
not. That is to be done either by the building inspector or somebody else that the Board of Trustees can determine. When they say this is demolition or not, then it comes back to us, we get that ruling, and then we apply Chapter 9. And I do not think our board should be saying whether this is a demolition or not unless the Board of Trustees is directing us to do
You
that.
read, our lawyer read it, the law, it was as clear as a bell. It doesn't talk about restricting additions or anything. It just, the whole historic district got wound up in one word, demolition.
Well, again, I'll disagree on that. We
Okay.
don't need to have that conversation. What I'm saying is this could very well meet the definition of demolition, but we are not the body within Irvington that will say if that is the
Okay,
case or not.
because right now,
If we are, we need to be directed that. What I understand is a determination gets made that whether this is a demolition or not, and then we apply.
anything that will get us moving, because we can't go back to the planning board till at this moment it's being interpreted that you've got to say this is not demolition, and that's even confusing, what you have to say to us.
Well, the 224-196 actually speaks to what their definitions are as far as demolish. The definition of demolish is to pull down, raise, destroy, remove, or relocate all or a substantial portion of a building. Now, they further break out substantial portion. Substantial portion, any portion of an exterior wall, porch or portico facing a public way, or 50% or more of the footprint of a building, as measured in plan, or 50% or more of the exterior walls of a building. I don't know who would want the ARB, or who would expect the ARB to be able to make that determination.
Do we have to apply the definition? Somebody has to apply rather the definition. So you need to get a determination. Once it says it's whether a demolition, then we can apply it. Yes.
You're talking about section 911, correct?
Yeah, 9/11.
So are you applying for a demolition permit?
No.
So that only is if you're applying for a demolition permit. That's the only way that applies.
But this is, actually goes before that, though. Someone needs to make a determination of whether this is
He
considered
needs to
demolition or
apply
not.
for a demo. See, this.
No, but you're applying to the planning board for your design.
Right.
So the demolition has nothing to do with it. You're not going to. My understanding of that, when the whole thing came about and there was all the discussion, was that if someone wanted to demolish their building without having a plan,
Right, they need a permit.
they need a permit for that, and that's when this gets
Come on, you
enacted.
can get a little bit deeper into it.
But you're not doing that right now. You're presenting a whole design, a whole package, so it goes through the normal process.
But we don't, but you're in agreement with me. We're not, as a board, going to determine whether he needs to apply for a demolition permit.
You would apply for a demolition permit as part of your building permit.
Exactly, and that doesn't, you do that before you come to us. So that's between you and the building department.
But the building department said we had to go to you,
Yeah.
correct?
The building department, I believe, was recommending if you want to come to us in an informal setting to see if this is going to be an acceptable design and get some direction, then that's probably a good
No.
idea.
No. The reason why it's informal is because there is no mechanism for us to be at the planning board to get a building permit. You see,
But
most of the
it doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense, because.
I'm telling.
But if you file for any other project,
We were
you go in front
only
of the planning
we
board.
were only to the planning board once. We went, did all the drawings, filed to go to the permit. We went there, sent out the certified letters. The first note that came back from the village engineer said, bear with me, guys. 130 Main Street is a contributing building in the historic overlay district, and the proposed change constitutes demolition under section 242 of the zoning code. Therefore, the demolition requires the ARB approval.
Well, then it's been determined to be a demolition, so the determination is made, so.
But that's a misinterpretation.
I-
That's a total misinterpretation by the engineer, because
No.
that would mean any project that goes through its normal process has to get a separate demolition permit, which was not the intent of that law.
No.
The intent of that law was if someone wants to come in and demolish something, then
Let's
it needs to be.
spend 5 minutes on the history of this law. Can we do that, please?
The law is to try to also maintain a historic facade where possible.
Right.
You know, so there's a second component to it. It's just not tear it down and have nothing to back it up, but it was to
It was
try to.
alterations as well, yes.
But if you look at,
To the extent of an alteration as to how it's affected by demolition.
but the process, once it's been determined to be a demo, is this long.
Yeah, so he has a demo permit, that's what you're saying?
It sounds
If you
like
look at the ARB's listing of
Yeah, so then
demolition.
if you have in
But-
other words, if that letter represents a
But-
demolition
Just a
permit?
second. The whole thing about the demolition, the secondary clauses for the ARB is about removal of the existing structure, and is there anything else you can, you know, there's
Exactly.
3 or
There's actually
4
different
points.
stages of it.
Section 11, 911.
You know, whether or not, but it's talking about, it's trying to delay the complete removal of the structure itself. In this case, I think I agree with Doug that it's about trying to, you know, it's necessary change in order to make the facade, to make the changes to the design itself. It's not removing the building per se.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
That's the first phase in that. And the whole, talk to me about the history of the demolition it was to stop taking down the yellow house.
no, it was in process.
No,
before
that's
that.
It's already in process.
It was in process before that.
Okay.
Regardless of what you hear.
We were
You're listening,
Why,
you're reading too much.
when we're talking about architecture here and how well it fits into the historic district, why is the only word we hear is demolition?
We're not hearing it. This is the first we've ever heard it, and it's from you asking us to make some determination. We're saying that we've never done that before. That is not
No,
part of it.
because normally, the information that you get is the building inspector, the owner applied for a permit, they went to the planning board, And the last thing before they start construction is to come to you guys.
Yeah, but
You're
no
now
one ever
free.
comes- No one, in general, people don't come to for a demolition permit if they're actually going before the planning board for site plan approval.
Right.
Should we-
The only time you get a demolition permit is if you're intending to remove the structure and not rebuild.
That's not what it says, though. You gotta read the first sentence in the law. And it says, if you are touching any part of the deck, any part of the facade on the main street facade, it's demolition.
It's not,
And you have to go to the.
It says,
No,
it
it
says
doesn't.
every application to demolish a
Demolish a
contributing
building.
building in the historic
Yeah.
overlay
very
district
clear.
shall be referred by the building inspector to the Board of Architectural
It's the
Review.
opening paragraph, 9, section.
And you're not making an application to demolish an existing building. I think the better example is what happened down on Astor Street, where they took down a
Correct.
building.
That-
A lot of
that's where it
people
started.
were
That's where it
upset about
started. I mean,
And they took it down just before they had anything ready. Is that?
That's correct.
See, the definition.
So they applied for demolition.
That's exactly correct.
You're not
So I didn't
applying
know
for
they did that.
demolition.
Yeah.
Yes.
With the building at 116, the original plan that came forward, while this demolition law was being.
Oh, because of the one on
Tear it
Astor
down.
Street.
No, they were going to tear down what came forward during that process was, the plan was to actually demolish 116 and build.
Yellow.
Build a set of
Yeah.
condos.
Yep.
So that was like a total replacement building.
Yep.
It's much different than what you're doing here.
I would love to get back in front of the planning board.
I don't know what's stopping you.
I think you guys, I
This
think you guys
site
can
is
say
not-
this isn't an
this
application
isn't
for
a-
demolition.
Right, that's.
Well, not by the definition of demolish, to pull down, raise, destroy, remove, or relocate all or a substantial portion of a building. None of that is happening here.
Right.
Any
Maybe
portion of
that's
the
right.
exterior. Yeah, you-
Portion is being destroyed, demolished.
Substantial portion.
And it's
No,
definition.
no, you gotta read the first one. Any portion of an exterior wall, porch, or portico facing a public way, or, then that's the, if you touch any portion of the exterior wall or the porch, or you do 50%, you're not touching on us, you're called demolition.
It protects the existing building.
I think it's ridiculous, but I'm not the only one reading it that way.
We still get to the situation of who makes that determination.
Work took over.
It says, you have to go to the ARB.
Look, I know what the
I know,
purpose
I'm-
of the
I'm not-
ARB is, I
I would
know.
love to get it over
I know, and
with.
I know you're frustrated, but my main concern being an attorney is that I know how to read the law, and I do know I know what the purpose of the ARB is, I know what our charge is.
Me too.
This is not our charge, is to make a determination whether this is a demolition or not. If it is, I need to know that. So I am
Can
not
I ask
gonna
you a
make that
question?
ruling tonight.
In terms of the historic district, do you have a given format and what you're to look at?
Yes, I understand very clearly.
Where
what
is
you
it?
look
You
at.
don't have it.
I do, I beg to differ. If you read section 9, I understand my responsibility. I'm just trying to give you a suggestion as how to proceed.
Okay.
I personally am not going to vote on, nor am I going to make a determination whether this constitutes a demolition. It is not within our charge. My charge is very clearly defined in chapter 9 and with the purpose of why
9/11.
we're here today. 9.1, purpose of the ARB. I understand what we're
Okay.
doing. We rule on the exterior appearance of buildings. We make sure that there's a continuity and harmonious development of the village. There's nothing here that says that I make a ruling as to whether that something constitutes demolition or not, so I'm not going to do it tonight.
I know.
If the Board of Trustees wants us to rule on whether something constitutes a demolition and whether you should go back to Ed to get a demo permit, then I think we need to know that. Otherwise, it makes no sense to me. It's
So
a
what
big
happens-
round- it's
what
been-
happens if
This is not a demolition.
It's
This is not a demolition.
This is the point. I'm
You're
not
not
going to rule
making
on
an
that it's not a
application for
demolition.
demolition.
I'm not, we are
That's
not,
just-
this is not this is not a
we're-
demolition.
I think that's a misreading of the intent of the demolition clause. It's not to stop you from,
You're right, we're missing the point.
Architectural-
The whole point, that was not the point of the whole
Facade.
legislation.
you know,
Well, I think they want to catch things happening in the historic district and designated ones, and what board is better equipped to handle whether it is or isn't appropriate is you, and they're sending it to you, not the planning board.
Well, it's appropriate for us to review whether this design is in keeping with the harmonious development of the historic district.
When?
When
In
you
what
come
stage?
to us
Why don't
with
you
an
pass a
application.
informal statement or right now that it says that they were as presented,
Yeah,
it's
that's,
in,
I
it's in
like that.
harmony with blah, blah, blah.
That's correct.
Just
Because it's
make it-
not being formally presented to us right now.
But I
This is
can't-
an
there's no
informal
mechanism for
discussion.
me to
And it's
formally-
certainly on the plans that we have, we're not gonna pass on whether it's.
I don't have an application before me
Yeah, we have
to
nothing
make
before us.
that determination. We have, I keep getting
We have a
the
design.
the name,
in front of us to review.
you know, informal discussion.
Yeah?
Yeah, but
Okay.
why is it,
There's no, I don't have anything to vote on.
there is no mechanism to get to you in a formal way?
Once the planning board makes their determination of what they do.
But the planning board is... touch me.
Well, that's the problem.
Does he have a permit?
Yeah, well, that
Have
is
you
a
filed for
problem,
a
and I'm gonna
permit?
be
Have you
here for
filed
the
for a
next
permit?
year.
Huh?
Have you filed for a
Is
permit?
this, do you have an application for
You
permit?
can't file for a permit until you go in front of until the planning board sees you and goes through the process of doing the engineering.
No, but that's how you apply to the ARB. Right?
Normally-
So that's not.
Normally, you go and get a building permit,
Right.
you start with asking for a building permit.
For architects.
And it says you gotta go to the planning board, because
It's gonna take-
you go through that, you go through all the
Lawyer.
routine, they approve it, you get the letter from the thing, you finalize the building
Right,
permit,
right.
guess what? Then they send you to the ARB.
But
You're
it's,
10 minutes away from digging a hole, and they send you, and that's what they all dislike, is the fact that the ARB was just a formality in the old days. All of a sudden, they're forced up in the front for historic buildings. I tell you,
planning sense and.
you got a feeling for what?
Look, I like the way it's set up. I think that what we're doing in the village is the correct approach, so we don't need to have an esoteric conversation about this. All I'm suggesting is
How does someone get to you?
you need to go, look, I'm sorry that you came to us seeking something that I'm not comfortable issuing, but it is 9:30 and we've been talking about this for half an hour, and we've got a member of the Board of Trustees here who
So what do
also doesn't agree with that necessarily this is clear. So
Okay.
if it's not clear, I'm not ruling on it,
That's
period.
fine.
Okay? So let's go, I would suggest you go back to the building department, seek a permit, and proceed with the planning board, and have a conversation with the village lawyer if we need to clear this up.
I
If
think
this-
that's the key thing, is to talk to Marianne and find out, you know, her interpretation of the law as it's written right now. Because
Yes.
It seems to me it doesn't apply. However, we have a flag thrown up by the village engineer saying that
Yes.
the characteristics
Thank
of
you.
change match the definition of demolition, but I think the intent doesn't match. So there's the problem. You know what I'm saying?
The trickiness is that this is a designated, and I forgot the words, this is in the SARC, it's a all baloney. Contributed.
So I think that the thing to do is, I can speak with the lawyer tomorrow, or you could call her up, Marianne, and go through it with her.
Especially if she speaks to somebody before he calls her, because she's not gonna know what the conversation.
Can you and I meet at some point to review how to do it, or should I?
I'm just gonna call her in the morning.
Huh?
I'm just gonna call her in the
That's what I
morning.
mean, okay.
And then ask her to be ready for your call.
Okay.
And try her later, later in the late morning, try it.
Okay, done.
It doesn't, it seems like there's something obvious that we're missing, and I think that she's very good
She is.
about, reading the intent of the law by the language of,
So, getting on the December, or the January planning board meeting is sort of up in the air, but we can work it out if the,
Ed will take care of that once we know from Mary Ann whether you can go forward with it at this point,
with what now?
with your application to the planning board. And
Okay,
your building permit.
you mean that
Once,
even though somebody called me, demolition, we're gonna say
that's
it's
the
a
purpose of
decided
the
demolition.
conversation tomorrow, is to find out if the demolition clause actually applies to it. It doesn't matter what the engineer says, because he's not reading the code, in terms of he's reading the specifics of something about the physical change to the building, but he's not reading the intention of what that clause is about.
Okay.
And they come back.
The logic of me being here is that the ARB wants a chance to talk about the design before it gets to be the 11th hour.
That's the perfect world
We're
right there.
hoping
That's
you-
what we're hoping becomes the process going forward. However, it's not there yet. But that is the way it should happen.
It should.
For
Especially-
you and for him. Because that will sail the application, a lot faster than the way it's going now. I mean, not this particular one, but in general, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So,
You see, the ones not in historic district, they can go for building permit. Then they come to you, you say change this, and they get a permit.
that's actually correct.
I can't get a permit. Till you kiss it.
Well,
According to mine,
Let's
according to
hope,
everybody
let's
that
hope,
read the damn thing.
and I apologize to Mr. Fitzgerald for this confusion, but unfortunately, somebody has to be first.
Okay, who is? He's an engineer, not. Okay, so us getting, remember, we also have response. This whole thing started September 7th,
Well,
and I was throwing a
let's
month before.
hope Mary Ann's gonna shed, final
You've
light
made
on it.
progress. I mean, it's not as though each time you come before us, you're actually further along in the
I
process,
have
so.
had the joy working, coming to your board. The comments were productive, and it got me, now, I have a very sympathetic client who doesn't have a lot of storage on a lot of things, but
We just want to get this
There we are.
stuck is the point. If the law is not clear.
Okay, thanks a million, gang.
Okay.
Condition, then we've got to make it clear.
Did you like it? I don't know.
Todd, do you want to turn?
Okay, actually,
I don't think it was ever